Hey, this is Sean with the Go Tennis Podcast, powered by Signature Tennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And if you're a fan of Bull Shark Sports, go to shop.letsgotennis.com. Get yourself a hoodie or a hat. Today, this is Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hestley. Today, Coach Ben wants to talk about what a good start to a training session could and should be. Ben, you ready to talk youth sports?
Let's get started.
All right, today Coach Ben wants to talk about starting progressions. So, speaking of starting, Ben, where do you want to start?
So we're kind of going to pick up where we left off last week. We finished last week talking a little bit about dynamic warm up. I mentioned it. Good way to learn or teach kids how to learn to train and prepare for practice and competition. So kind of pick up where we left off there. You know, one thing I think that dynamic warm up is important is not just the movements about dynamic warm up and get your body moving, get the blood flowing, get the limbs loose, but also create some focus and gets them feeling confident. That's really should be your purpose in a warm up is get the kid feeling confident and get the kid feeling focused because honestly the first 10 minutes of a lesson or a training session, whether it's with a coach like me or you or whether it's with a parent, the first 10 minutes you're out there is crucial because if you lose them in the first 10 minutes, it's really hard to get them back engaged in whatever it is you're doing.
And what do you mean by losing?
Well, if you're if they're kind of like if you're in this coaching session like us with a group and they're you kind of aren't taking command of the court, as we'd say in tennis, or taking command of the field in baseball or softball, and they're kind of being goofy and there's a room for a little bit of chatter. You know, I work with a lot of teenagers and they like to be social and talk, and we encourage that. So, but not to the point where you're disrupting the practice and the flow and the structure. So make sure you command do something that's really easy to begin with that they can all do and really get them focused and dialed in for the session. If it's a one-on-one session, so mom or dad taking the kid out to hit balls or practice their hitting or with a coach, a private coach, those 10 minutes are really important. You know, if it's too difficult right away, then the kid loses confidence. They get frustrated. It can really be hard to get them back on track. I see that a lot with a parent that goes out to work with their kid on hitting and they jump in the batting cage. Mom or dad starts rifling balls at them. They're swinging and missing, swinging and missing. And go back to that safetyism thing. Mom or dad, rather than letting them process those misses for themselves, they want to help them so bad they just start barking out information. Maybe it's a cue from a coach, maybe it's something they heard online, maybe it's something that they in their own experience feel like can help. And oftentimes, with every swing comes a different piece of information that's hopefully helpful. And you just sort of go down the toilet bowl of the kid being more and more frustrated rather than starting out with something really simple and easy that they can do, gives them confidence, then we can start progressing towards the more difficult activities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And all the stories come to mind of all the times things went wrong in the beginning of any lesson. But you mentioning the teenagers as well, we would do a little dynamic warm up where we would jog the lines. So you had to do a little sideways, do a little forward, a little backward, a little sideways, and you jog the line, you take your racket with you. So you've got all those things. But I had one teenage girl I was working with. She was about 13 or 14 years old, and she just wanted to tell me about her day. She was so excited to talk to her tennis coach. And you can't just stifle that. I take that back. You can. I don't think you should. So I gave her mini tennis in the beginning. The next thing we would do once we did our dynamic stretching, whatever it was, we a little bit of mini tennis. Just let's feel the ball. And I said, "You got 5 minutes. Go." And she would just tell me all about her day and everything that was going on, and then we could get to work. Is that kind of what we're talking about as a starting point for a
Yeah,
for a training
totally. I mean,
session?
I have kids that are super social as well, on the baseball side, they want to jump in. We start hitting, and we usually after our dynamic warm up and some athletic skills, we will get into tee work. It's kind of the first thing we do typically is they're doing something off the tee. And they want to talk and they want to chat and they're like, "Hey, here, Coach Sean, here's my day," and blam, and then my teacher did this and blam, and you're like, "Hey, stop, okay? We can talk and we can hit, but we
Uh-huh.
can't do both at the same time. You can't be telling me a story while you're swinging. You're just not going to be focused and it's not going to be purposeful."
And there's a certain
contrary to
age, but there's a certain age for that. Like
yeah,
this was okay. We are going to hit and talk at the same time,
yeah, and
but
certainly contrary to tennis, I shoot the breeze and hit mini tennis a lot, but I feel like that's a little different. Sometimes in baseball, it takes so much focus, even
very
hitting
different. Yeah, yeah,
correctly. It's really hard to be chatting it up with somebody while they're trying to hit.
right.
So I'm sorry. Tell me your story, like you did. Tell me your story. Okay, good. Now let's hit. Okay, if you have another thought, we can stop and you can share that thought, but we can't be trying to hit and you telling me something at the same time,
Right.
right? So I have that experience well, but I think the main thing about about starting out is you know, you want to make. I look back at a blog that I wrote a year ago actually about good cage habits, and it was trying to help parents create good cage habits for their kids rather than just hopping in and having them at home plate and just firing balls at them and spitting off information. Creating good cage habits. And a statement that I read about myself that I liked was I wrote the first athletic thing you do, or the first swing better not be the first athletic thing you've done since getting out of the car.
I like that a lot.
And whether it's tennis or baseball, softball, I see that all the time. That the first swing we take is the first athletic thing we've done since we've walked from the parking lot.
I think this fits in well with my theory that when you walk onto a tennis court, you should have already broken a sweat. Meaning, just you watch the kids at tournaments and they got the jump ropes and they're doing but they're going to walk on to warm up. But that warm up, as an example, whether it's your league warm up, whether you're an adult, especially if you're an adult, to be able to walk out there, if we're 40, 50, 60 years old and we're going to go out and warm up in less than 10 minutes by hitting a few volleys and a few serves, I think you should break a sweat before you ever make it on court.
Yeah. But how many times have we seen that classic tennis coach, classic club tennis pro that ladies walk on the court, here comes your alpha team. We're going to line them up on the doubles alley on the baseline, and we're just going to be, it was even,
balls across.
Yeah, three balls across, double rhythm feeding. That's even a name for it. Double rhythm feeding, rapid for just feeding balls. They're whaling balls. I mean, how many pros are like this? I mean, if you want to create a dodgeball team to recruit the best, just recruit a bunch of tennis pros that all they do is feed because they're the best people at dodgeball. So here's the feed. They're feeding, dodging, dodging those forehands that are rifling back across the baseline with no intention. And I used to tell pros all the time. I was a tennis director. I had a bunch of interview lessons, and that would be a common interview lesson when you go to the club to interview for your job. You have to give a lesson. That would be like the common drill number one is they get the ladies lined up and just start having fireballs. And I always ask them, I'm like, why do you do that? And the common response, I want to get them moving. I want to get them warmed up. We just do that to get them warmed up. Okay. So it's cold outside, as you mentioned. We've just shuffled through all these people through this line. We've hit like 100 balls total. They've probably hit about 8 or 10 balls each. The group's probably hit 100, depending on how many are in the group. Now we got to go pick up all those balls, and it's cold out. So now we're cold again because we just spent 5 minutes picking the balls up. I just think there's a much more effective way to get people warmed up than moving them across a baseline, having them aimlessly hit.
Well, there is, and here's a shameless plug for a product we have in our shop: is if you get the Tenebot Rover that picks up balls while you're hitting, then we don't have that problem. We can go back to 3 balls across, and everybody's happy.
I'll give you another shameless plug for you, man. How about I talked about this before on the show, Topspin Pro. If you're going to do something like that, have them warm up on the Topspin Pro because they're at least getting a purposeful feel of hitting a topspin ground stroke. So they've taken some swings. They've maybe broken a sweat doing the Topspin Pro, and now they can go do a coach-fed drill where they're actually hitting a live ball. That would be a better progression than them. But it's also complex, right? Now you're talking about they're on the baseline. They're taking a full swing, which is much more complex stroke than you and me 5 feet from the net doing mini tennis, which is where I feel players should start.
But most players can't do that. If you ever watched,
they should.
You watch the C-level ladies go out there at the mid court. They go to the service line and they poke the ball back and forth for 3 minutes, and then they go back to they just can't do it like we can. It's a different thing.
So they need to practice doing that.
But they
I
don't.
I guarantee you they can. And they
They
haven't
don't.
then they haven't, but they should, and they should be in an environment that encourages it. If they've gone through a good beginner tennis program, any beginner tennis program that's of any quality is going to utilize something like we use with kids where we start small space to big space, give the players confidence, get them learning how to contact the ball before they progress back. And I see a lot of people, to your point, that they start out, yeah, they go back to the baseline, and I've worked with those players that go back from the baseline. They got their semi-western or frying pan Diane grip. They're wailing on balls, and what happens is at some point they're going to plateau to where if they can't play, if you can't play from the front court, if you can't volley in a continental grip, if you can't overhead have a continental grip, if you can't hit slice, it's going to be very difficult to play successful doubles at the high levels.
You'll never get past 3.5. Yep.
You're never going to get past 3.5 because if you can't transition to the net and play the front part of the court successfully, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that. And, that's why I start players out that way. But I'll just, for time's sake, give you a couple things that I would do rather than, I know mini tennis can be boring. It's just bumping the ball back and forth. But here's a few things that I do with players that makes mini tennis a little bit more purposeful and in my mind much more entertaining. Okay, and it's whether I usually mostly do these with junior players because that's who I mostly work with, but you can do these with adult players as well. The first one I like to do is what I call touch the ball, touch the net. And so rather than just you and me just tapping the ball back and forth, I have to touch the ball. As soon as I touch the ball, now the ball has to bounce, by the way, that's a rule. So as soon as I touch the ball, I have to step forward. Usually we're only a few feet from the net. Step forward, touch the net, and then back pedal back in recovery and play your shot off the bounce. Okay. Very challenging right away, but the kids, fall into it, pretty successfully, and they have a good time with it. The other one that a lot of our kids like to do is called let it be. So they know what a let is. A let is when obviously the ball touches the net and goes over to the side, mostly on the serve. I mean, we have to tell them in a real rally that you have to play that ball. But let it be, there's not as much movement as touch the ball, touch the net, but they get dialed in and focused. That's another thing about the warm up is you want them to be engaged and be focused. And they're just trying to bump the ball low over the net where it literally hits the top of the net and goes over. Um, they might only do their success rate on this is usually pretty low, but they enjoy doing it. They it dials their strokes in. It gets their movement pretty close to what we would want in a real match, and helps them focus on that specific task of making the ball tip the net and go over. The other one that a lot of our kids like, a lot of our teenage kids like, is battle box. This battle box is actually without a net, and they're battling each other in the service box on the same side of the court. So you and I, if we're playing, Sean, would be in the service box together. So think one service box, you and me together. We're alternating shots and we're competing. We're playing for score. Usually I'll do it for time because I do like a winner move up, loser move down type of scenario, or rotate, the winner rotates, the loser stays kind of rotation. So I play for time so everybody stays on the same schedule. But in battle box, they have to tap the ball up. So they can't slam it down. So it has to be hit in upward fashion. And we can debate. We always debate. Was that up? Did that really go up off your strings? Did you just drop it over? Anyways, but they can hit the ball forwards, backwards, sideways, whatever. And then the other player has to go get that ball. So it gets their feet moving a lot. It's really good for teenagers, preteens, kids that are beginner level that you're out there. They're not going to do any, they don't want to move, and so they're there because they need an athletic activity, a physical activity. So battle box is something that sort of demographic is gravitated to because it's entertaining for them. It's pretty easy. They don't have to worry about getting the ball over the net. They just have to tap it up and land it in the space. And like I said, they can hit it forwards, they can hit it behind them, they can hit it sideways. But as long as the ball comes up off the strings, it counts. And they really get into those. So those are kind of my go-to mini tennis warm ups, starters, skills. And I like them because I like things that warm the kids up, but also teach skills at the same time, you know?
But there's a purpose there. And there's kind of a
Yeah.
purpose driven drill where it isn't just three balls, go move, go hit the ball. There's something being accomplished and there's something being practiced.
Right. And that to me is how all your progressions should be. You start Start simple to complex, easy to hard if you can, small space to big space. Even in baseball, you're hitting off the tee. It's pretty small space, or a coach that's just, we call it soft toss, just softly tossing the ball up so the player can hit it. That's in a small space. And then we progress back to larger space. In tennis, it's the baseline to baseline play. In baseball, it's progressing all the way back to an actual, live person pitching at you, or a pitching machine shooting you the ball at a speed you might see in a real game. So, and kind of going from the least amount of variables to the most amount of variables, right? So if you and me are just playing mini tennis back and forth, or hitting volley to volley close to the net, not a lot that can go on there in terms of variables. But obviously, as we move farther apart, there's more space, there's more options for you to hit. Your swing gets larger, the ball's traveling farther, bouncing higher. There's a lot more variables for the player to have to deal with.
Agreed. I'm convinced. What else you got?
Yeah, I think that's it. So just train smart, folks. Start small, grow it, keep the kids engaged, keep the kids focused and confident, and you should see them continue to develop. But that another thing of our habits series is creating good training habits, and good training habits come from good, solid progressions as you move through a training or practice session.
There you go. I like it. Coach Ben Hesley, this has been Youth Sports Talk. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
All right. Have a good week, everyone.